Every person in this room who found this funny. You have 30 seconds to gather your belongings. That analysis on the Daehan acquisition, that was not his work. I've been paying attention longer than you think.
She spilled hot coffee on the most terrifying CEO in Seoul. Her cruel coworkers pointed and laughed, expecting her to be ruined on the spot. But the CEO didn't fire her, he raised his finger and fired everyone who dared to laugh at her. The glass tower held its light long after the rest of Seoul had gone soft and blue outside the windows. Naomi Bankole sat hunched at her desk in the open-plan bullpen, eyes burning as she cross-checked a financial model for the fourth time, because perfect was the only currency she had left. Her phone buzzed, a message from her mother in Brooklyn. Dr. Osei says the treatment can't wait past next month. Naomi locked the screen and pressed her palms to her eyes until the sting passed. She could not fall apart here. She'd come to Seoul on a visa that expired the same week her internship did, chasing opportunity in an office where her name was mispronounced on purpose and her reports vanished into other people's inboxes with other people's names stamped on top. Her team lead, Young Ho-suk, breezed past at 11:30. Bankole. That analysis, send it to my email. And get me a coffee first. He never waited for a response. She thought about arguing, the way she always did, in the 2 or 3 seconds before she remembered what arguing had cost her last time. So she stood, smoothed her blouse, and went to make the coffee. The executive floor was hushed, carpeted, unfamiliar. The conference room doors glowed with an unscheduled session no one had told her about. She should have turned back. Instead she pushed through with the cup steaming in her hand. Because some stubborn part of her still believed doing the invisible job well enough would eventually make her visible. A dozen executives filled the room, and at the head of the table sat a man she'd only seen in framed photographs, Kang Min, the CEO, dark-suited, commanding the room without raising his voice. Naomi froze half a second too long. An analyst near the door, one who'd laughed loudest the day Naomi mispronounced a client's name, shifted her foot, quiet and casual. Naomi's toe caught the edge. The cup left her hand before her mind caught up, and coffee arced across Kang Min's chest in a wide, dark stain. The room went silent, and then it didn't. Laughter broke first from Young Ho-suk's corner, sharp and delighted, spreading through the room until executives who'd been rigid with tension were pointing, grinning, one of them clapping in disbelief. Naomi stood frozen, the crushed cup still in her hand, bending forward instinctively. The posture of an apology her body made before her mouth could catch up, waiting for the words that would end everything. But the quiet that followed was a different kind. Kang Min stood perfectly still, coffee soaking through his shirt, his face empty of everything but something worse than anger. He looked past Naomi at the laughing crowd and raised his arm, extending one long finger across the room. You. And you. And you. One by one the smiles slid off their faces. Every person in this room who found this funny, you have 30 seconds to gather your belongings. Security will escort you out tonight. When Young Ho-suk started to protest, Kang Min cut him off, quiet and absolute. I don't employ people who confuse cruelty with camaraderie. Clear your desks. The room dissolved into chaos as security appeared at the doors. Kang Min turned to Naomi, still trembling, and said only, "Come with me." "Not you," when she flinched, expecting to be added to the condemned. "You're the only person in that room who did anything worth respecting tonight." In his office, floor-to-ceiling windows framing all of Seoul, he finally spoke. "Do you know how I noticed you, Ms. Bankole? 6 weeks ago an analysis crossed my desk on the Daehan acquisition. Meticulous. It was submitted under Young Ho-suk's name. That was not his work." He told her he'd been paying attention longer than she knew, that careful, thorough work like hers was rare, rarer still from someone who'd been given every reason to stop trying. "I'm reassigning you. Effective tonight. Executive analyst, working directly under me." The salary he named was enough to mean her mother's next message wouldn't have to be an apology. "Why?" Naomi finally asked, "would you do this?" Kang Min's face shifted, close to a smile's shadow. Simpler isn't the same as right. I don't forget who the talent actually was. Go home. Start Monday. She started Monday with her spine straighter, chin no longer tucked toward her chest. Her new desk sat just outside his office, and within days she understood the company's real architecture better than she had in 6 months as an intern, auditing spending, sitting in strategy sessions where her opinion was, for the first time, expected to matter. Rumors followed, anonymous and vicious, insinuating what she must have done to earn the promotion. Naomi said nothing and kept working. Kang Min said something for her. At the next company address, he stopped mid-remarks and told the room, without naming her, that anyone circulating baseless speculation would be dealt with the same way he'd dealt with the people who'd left. She is under my protection. That is not a suggestion. Naomi sat with her cheeks warm, feeling, for the first time since landing in this country, something close to belonging. Weeks later, cross-referencing departmental accounts on ordinary reconciliation work, Naomi found the first crack: a vendor payment routed to an account that didn't match its registered details, a consulting fee paid to a firm with no footprint beyond one wire transfer. She almost dismissed it. Then she found the second. The third. Every discrepancy, traced back far enough, had been approved at some stage by Young Ho-suk, dozens of times, over nearly 2 years, small enough individually to vanish, large enough together to have quietly bled millions from the company. The bullying hadn't been simple office politics. It had been cover. She brought it to Kang Min the next morning. He went still in the particular way that meant he was containing something enormous. 2 board members, he said finally, tracing the trail she'd built to 2 names sitting on his own board. This isn't a personnel problem anymore. They've been preparing to take the company. Young Ho-suk did not go quietly. Days later, corporate security flagged unauthorized badge access on the server floor near midnight, and Naomi reached the room only steps behind the alert, finding him crouched at the terminal, wiping backups, sweat darkening his collar. I have nothing left to lose, he said, and there was something genuinely frightening in how flatly he said it. He threatened her family back home if she didn't hand over what she'd already copied. Naomi held her ground, and a heartbeat later Kang Min was there with security, his hands finding her shoulders, his fury no longer aimed at her at all. He won't reach them, he promised. It's the last threat he'll ever make against anyone in this building. Young Ho-suk was arrested before dawn, the servers intact, the evidence preserved. The board did not take the exposure of 2 of its own gracefully. Within a week they called an emergency session against Kang Min, seizing the chaos as an opening. Naomi wasn't invited, but she stood in the corridor outside the glass and heard the chairman's voice through it. 2 board members implicated, a break-in, mass firings. The market doesn't see a CEO cleaning house. It sees a company in freefall. We are calling a vote of no confidence, effective immediately. She did not wait for permission. She pushed through the frosted doors with 3 weeks of quietly reconstructed evidence in her pocket, built on instinct, before anyone had asked her to. I have information directly relevant to this vote, she said, and walked to the front of the room instead of the door. She laid it out methodically: wire transfers, shell companies, dates matched to approvals matched to 2 offshore accounts belonging to men seated at that very table. Over the last 22 months, nearly $4.1 million moved out of this company's accounts into personal accounts registered to Director Lim and Director Park. I have the wire confirmations. I have Mr. Young's statement to police, naming you both directly. The room went silent. Director Lim's face drained of color. Director Park's objection died in his throat under the weight of dates too precise to argue with. The instability wasn't caused by Mr. Kang cleaning house, Naomi said quietly. It was caused by the mess these 2 men spent 2 years making. I'd ask the board to consider whether the person who exposed the theft is really the one you should be voting to remove. Security escorted both directors out within minutes. The vote of no confidence never happened. In its place, the board passed a unanimous motion of support for Kang Min, and an unprecedented commendation for the analyst who had twice uncovered what the company's own leadership had missed. It was Kang Min who found her on the executive floor a few evenings later and handed her a thin folder instead of a report. "Full coverage," he said. "Every procedure your father needs, for as long as he needs them. It's done." When Naomi asked why, throat too tight for more, he said, "Because you gave this company something no salary could buy, loyalty that didn't flinch when it would have been easier to." He led her to the window where it had all started, the same glittering skyline spread beneath them. "I'm creating a new position. Head of Financial Strategy. A permanent seat on the executive board, your name on the door instead of someone else's stolen credit." He wasn't offering it, he said, for anything that had happened that week, but because he'd watched her rebuild herself from a room full of people who'd tried to erase her, and he didn't want to run a company that didn't have her standing in it as an equal. Naomi looked out at Seoul, endless and glittering below, and there was no tremor left in her voice at all. "Yes," she said. "I accept." "Then welcome," Kang Min said, "to the table, Ms. Bankole." She did not bow her head.